Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast, some might say it's the end of an era. Some might say it's just another football podcast. You be the judge. There's only one host, that might give you a clue. But he is the hostess with the mostess, so he does manage to steer this ship through the choppy waters of the football world. We're talking news, previews, and predictions. So all of the goodness you come to expect from the football podcast. If you're checking us out on YouTube, do subscribe. It helps the channel. Ultimately, that helps everybody. You, the channel, them, everybody. Everybody. So here we go. This is CookieCast. You can't see the forest for the trees. And here we go. The joke that never gets old these days is, I would say, whose turn is it? But seeing as there's only one of you here, it defaults to being your turn every time. So why don't you kick us off?
I'm going to say something that I hope isn't the case, but could possibly be. So, welcome along, ladies and gentlemen, for what could be the final instalment of You Can't See the Forest for the Tees. Now, I don't say that with malice and forethought. It's obviously you'll notice as on the screen. There's no third wheel. There's no third axis. There's no third leg to this particular tricycle that you've come to depend upon each week for your championship-based football stats. But yeah, the ship's running without one of its sails. What can we say? And the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed it's been that way for a number of weeks. So it would appear that we sadly might have to rename the podcast as I can't really hold up the forest end of the bargain, to be honest with you. As obviously, if Matt's listening, apologies, but I don't really give a flying fuck about Forest results, if I'm being honest. So. And do you know what? I'd be disappointed if he didn't say the same about Borough. I bet he don't give two fucks about Middlesbrough.
It's like that. Borough. Yeah, they did that the weekend. They're interesting. Now, what did Forest do? Probably not. In some ways, I'm more caring than any of you, because I do care about both teams. I look for both teams' scores, who scored those goals, how they were scored, how many equal opportunities. I'm not comptroller. That was the word I was looking for.
So, my first part of business in the new year will be to think up a catchy Borough-based pun for the relaunch of the football podcast.
Rebranding.
Yeah. But with every rebrand or relaunch, you've got to have a bit of new merch, haven't you? So why not just bust out the new?
Is it
the new shirt that was bought for Christmas?
Look at that. Set your limits. Has it got a name on it?
Do we think it's got a name on it, kids?
Is it going to be Williams or is it going to be Chubba?
And it's not got anyone back.
No.
But what I did notice, I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up, but if you see like
ooh,
that's actually in the fabric.
That's well swanky.
But it's actually got the coordinates of the stadium on it.
Nice.
Which is quite a nifty little touch, I thought.
That is real nice.
On one of... Now, was it last season or was it the season before last home shirt? It's not on this one. As you can just see, it just says... The inside of the shirt just says how much of a bifter I am, basically, with the size that I need. But on the inside of, I think it was last season's home shirt, it had the lyrics to a song by a band from the area called... Oh, I'm making myself like a proper twat now by not knowing this. But the song was... I can't remember the name of the band. But the song was Infant Hercules. Or something like that. And it's linked with... I think it's linked with the starting of the club or the precursor of the club, which was Middlesbrough Ionopolis. So it's got links that go however long back, and it was just printed. The actual full lyrics of the song was printed on the inside of the collar of the shirt.
Wow.
So they seem to put those little sort of... I don't suppose you class it as an Easter egg as such. It's not really hidden, but it's sort of that thing that if you're not looking for it, you'll miss it.
Yeah.
Sort of. But yeah, so I have to thank the lovely Miss Brinton for that little puppy. And then I'm just waiting for the days when Middlesbrough announce the January sales, and the away shirt will be winging its way over to.
Nice one, nice work.
Yeah. So back to the naming of the podcast. If anyone can think of any witty new names or any directions that the podcast could go in. I mean, I could change it to a Middlesbrough and Hartlepool based podcast, but again, I would just be basically firing both arms of that myself. So
there is that.
Who knows? We'll see what happens, but you never know.
Just a suggestion. How about calling it "A Bomb Went Off and Did £9.20's worth of improvement"? No? That's like an in-joke, like, if you know, and that's like a big thing these days. It's popular. No? Well, I'm just,
Wow.
just shooting from the hip. So, I mean, it's a bit of one of them, isn't it? There was an actual Christmas break in the last week. So I don't want to step on any toes here, but I can't imagine there's a massive amount of stuff happening news-wise in a segment we like to call Last Week in Football. Did anything major happen? Any hirings and firings?
Well, let's discuss. So I suppose from a podcast central point of view, big changes occurred within the last 24/48 hours. As we discussed on last week's podcast, the game that was, as the time of recording this evening, was Sheffield Wednesday versus Middlesbrough, which was a battle of former Middlesbrough manager Tony Pulis,
indeed,
and current Middlesbrough manager Neil Warnock, two of the longest tenured managers in the game. However, yeah, I don't even know if it was I can't remember if it was last night or if it was this morning, but Wednesday sacked Tony Pulis.
What? He's only been there a few weeks.
Yeah, he'd been there for 10 years. It was either 10 years or 10 weeks. Rows over Sheffield Wednesday transfer plans led to Pulis acts. A series of rows, this is all courtesy of Sky Sports News. A series of rows over plans for the January transfer window led to Sheffield Wednesday's sacking of Tony Pulis after just 10 league games in charge. The former Stoke, West Brom and Crystal Palace manager, not mentioned Middlesbrough, was sacked after just one win, with Wednesday's second bottom in the Championship 3 points from safety. In his statement last night, club owner Dejphon Chansiri referred to other issues which have had a bearing on this decision, as well as performances and results. Pulis confirmed earlier this month that he had provided the club's board with a list of players he wanted to sign when the January window opens next week. However, disagreements over both budgets and personnel saw relations deteriorate significantly in the past week, leading to the announcement on Monday night. So it was yesterday evening that he was sacked. So, just massively threw into disarray their preparations for the game tonight. I mean, you could argue that it probably threw Borough through a bit of a loop as well. If you've prepared all week to set up against a Tony Pulis-led team, you know exactly how they're going to play. You know exactly what sort of elements they're going to throw at you, stuff like that. And then obviously, if he's binned the night before the game, you'd imagine that the guy who takes over him would have taken the training session earlier today and potentially either got him to stay on the course of what they'd been practicing all week to get ready for the game, or might have just thought, bollocks to it. I'm in charge now. I'm going to see if I can get the players to do something a bit different. I don't really agree with what Tony was doing. Let's try and play this. And that might have come into effect. Not to skip forward too much, but we might see if that played into the hands of Sheffield Wednesday or Middlesbrough when we come to discuss the game. But yeah, I suppose that's one of the biggest things that happened. Outside of that, let's have a look. I suppose from a Borough perspective, the biggest thing was that their Boxing Day game, as was discussed on the podcast last week, did indeed get cancelled.
It did, yes.
So there was no football on Teesside on the 26th of December.
Nope.
Which is boring, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was another sacking, but it was in France. So the PSG manager got binned, and he's been replaced by Mauricio Pochettino.
Really?
So all that means is that one guy who was getting paid several $1 million a year, or francs, or euros, or whatever the fucking paid there, has been replaced by another one. So
that's what you do when you got loads of money in it.
Yeah.
Well, let us go now to the book. Look, I'm Tommy Two Pens, because this pen here, this guy, this one, he's threatening to walk out on me, and there is absolutely no way I'm going to be caught out mid podcast. That is a fact. So I've had to double down with a lovely leopard print number. But for now, we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to click that like that. I'm going to get rid of that for now. So, as literally just discussed, Middlesbrough versus Rotherham United. 2 Ps rather than any numbers. 2 Ps. Game postponed. Any idea till when?
Not been announced yet. I imagine it'll be. They'll earmark either a midweek, or they'll hope that they both get knocked out of the FA Cup at the same point, so they can reschedule a game for a weekend when they would have been in the FA Cup.
Makes sense. Obviously, nothing to discuss there. Moves us swiftly on to Nottingham Forest versus Birmingham City, and let's just get it out there straight off the bat. There's nothing to discuss there either because two fat bagels. Now the thing here is, I say there's nothing to discuss, but two fat bagels does give points in this game because not only did your good self pick a draw, I also picked a draw. We, in fact, did pick the same draw. So there's points there. Little point each. No goal scorers to discuss. So just a couple of points. So the roundup of those two games, obviously, there's a point each. That's quite significant. We'll come back to that. Sheffield Wednesday versus Middlesbrough. Played earlier this evening. You did allude to what it might look like, but what was the outcome of that game?
So as we discussed, we come back to whose hand it played into better, the change of management. And sadly to report, it played into the hand of the Sheffield Wednesday boys as they came away with a 2-1 win.
Indeed they did. Now then, what that does from a score perspective, it's not looking pretty. So, do you know who scored those goals?
Andrew, I believe the goal scorers were Callum Patterson.
Correct.
And who? Shaw.
Correct.
Sheffield Wednesday. The Middlesbrough goal was scored by Duncan Watmore.
A name that's cropping up more and more. Something that I've made a mental note of for later. Absolutely picked him for the upcoming game. What that does points wise is nobody picked that score. The closest would have been me if we'd have flipped it because I had Middlesbrough down for a couple. You sir went for again a 1-1 draw, but nobody picked any of the 3 goal scorers. So that's no points there. Literally moments ago, the Stoke City Nottingham Forest game finished up. One of those again, he's not here, so let's just make it official. Ended 1-1. Seems to be a little bit of a pattern there. Obviously, Forest have got a little bit further off the ground in the fact that they can actually put the ball in the back of the net, but only when the other team does exactly the same. Whereas previously they couldn't even do that. Again, neither you or I picked a 1-1 draw, or of any draw in any fact. And Thompson scored for Stoke City, and Chester scored for Forest.
Own goal.
Oh, there we go. So that wasn't even a thing. What that does mean, points wise, and if you're keeping score and you got your bingo card out, absolutely no points out of that game. So we end the week on a point each. So we should have a tiebreaker. We should do those things like we used to. Remember when it was fun back in the day when we used to,
Guess the attendance.
Name how many seats this stadium's got, and all of that. Yeah, we don't do that anymore. We don't do that. So it's just a point each. We'll take half a point each for the week. None of that messing around rubbish. It's not going to be too long before it'll be like, right, Paul, we're going to do a quiz. Can you imagine the score in that? Well, Andy, you managed to write your own name, so you can have half a point. Thanks, Paul. I tried to make it an easy one. You got all of them right, and I got nothing. Let's look forward. Tired of looking backwards. Let's look forward. We'll look forward to a time where more football is played. It's one of those at this point in time. If we kill off the Forest side of the podcast, does that mean that we would be predicting one game this week? For now, we'll keep his spirit alive. For now. And we'll talk about Preston North End going up against Nottingham Forest. Now, as is the thing, we play a little sub game at this point in time because I have already put my scores on paper, and we play a little game that we like to call "Did Andy pick a player that plays for either team?" Do you want to go first or second, picking Preston North End versus Nottingham Forest?
I'll go.
Go on.
Some horrendous feedback. I'll go first. I will go for Preston 2, Nottingham Forest 1.
It's a classic score, one I personally like myself. Who are going to score 2 Preston goals?
Barkhazen. Pearson.
Okay, and for Forest?
Mighton.
Interesting.
New name for your book.
I don't think it is. I think we've had that name before. Let's say it's new and yeah, probably new. I have gone for a surprise, not surprising to some, a 1-1 draw. I have also picked Barkhazen, and I'm throwing Grabham yet another bone. Because maybe, just maybe. So, that brings us to Wycombe Wanderers versus Middlesbrough. As is the way, I have already gone in on mine. So, why don't you... Well, it's one of those. Normally it would be a case of you would go last because it's your team. But maybe you want to go first so that you don't feel like you've been influenced. Who knows? Your choice.
I would be happy to, Andrew. I have gone for a Wycombe 0, Middlesbrough 3 result.
Right, James, I didn't see you there. Go on then. Who's going to score 3 Middlesbrough goals?
He got one tonight, so I'm going to go for him to get another one. So what more?
Okay.
As they said in another podcast I was listening to, what more could you ask for?
Absolutely.
Tavernier. And I feel like he's getting closer, so I'll go for Morsey again. I was picking him, he's yet to deliver.
Okay. I have gone for a Wycombe Wanderers 1, Middlesbrough 2. I've gone with Samuel to score for Wycombe Wanderers. I've gone for Britt to score for Middlesbrough, and like yourself, I've also gone for Tavernier. So there you go. Are we talking money?
Well, your Preston 1, Forest 1 at 5-1, and your Middlesbrough 2, Wickham 1 at 7-1 gives you a double of 47-1.
Good numbers, like it.
Whereas my Preston 2, Forest 1, and Middlesbrough, Wickham 0, Middlesbrough 3. The Preston 2-1 at 8-1, combined with the Middlesbrough 3-0 at 14-1, gives me a double of 134-1.
Wowza. We'll be dining out on that if that comes in. That click, ladies and gentlemen, signifies the end of the predictions. As previously mentioned, I did look ahead into the future, some might say. No, I didn't use a crystal ball. I used the BBC website. And what I was faced with was, as far as I could see, there were no upcoming midweek games for the following week. And the next time I saw mention of these here teams playing the football was FA Cup football. Now then, what does that mean from a predictions point of view? Will we be predicting those games? Do you want to predict those games? What do you want to do?
I don't see why we wouldn't predict those games. I believe we did it on the podcast last year.
Absolutely.
So I'm certainly happy to put a little predictions in there for those. So we'll discuss that next week on insert name of podcast here.
But I thought you had something. It needs to be like the mighty. No, I was going to go with like the Mighty Borough podcast, but there's absolutely nothing out there.
I was thinking like the Borough Banter Zone. I've probably not.
If you're happy and you Borough, clap your hands.
Not bad. It's a good placeholder.
Put it on the old back burner, maybe.
Yeah, I like it. But obviously, if there's any thoughts out there amongst the viewing and listening public, they can always throw them towards us and see what sticks.
Absolutely. If you've got a recommendation for what ultimately what Paul should call his new podcast, send them along to our Twitter page, our email address. If I knew them off the top of my head, I would be telling you them right now. But jump over to the website because it's all there at the click of a button. I should learn them really, but you know. That brings us to the final segment. See how I've segmented this week's podcast to make it out like it's always been that way. I mean, it's kind of been that way. I'm just drawing attention to it now. Our final segment is known as AOB, and if you're not in the business world, that means any other business. Mr. Williams, any other business? He's thinking long, he's thinking hard, or his internet's frozen. It's one of those things.
Nothing as such, other than if you're a football fan and you're listening to the podcast as we speak.
And you think, you know something, I could do a football.
And you're thinking, I like football. I support a team that's potentially in the Championship. I could fill that void. Bring yourself on.
Applications are open for an unpaid presenting position, a co-host position in York, England, and nay the world's number one Middlesbrough and team to be decided football podcast. Shit. So, I actually have some other business, and it will come as no surprise that business is, at time of recording, we are staring down the barrel of the end of what some, nay most, would say is possibly the worst year in history. I'm not trying to belittle other potentially bad years, but what it does mean is that we get to say Happy New Year. Once you're listening to this, it'll be even closer, because this will be released tomorrow, if I can get the lead out in the next hour or so. Anyway, Happy New Year, one and all, to podcast listeners or podcast viewers all over the world, from me and from that gentleman over there, I'm sure. Right, thank you, sir, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with me. And until next time, on... I was gonna throw a last one out, but the mind was officially blank.
That can be the cliffhanger to end all cliffhangers. Tune in next week for, and just cut it there.
Yeah. Tune in next week for and then gone fade to black. Go Sopranos way, just fade to black, and then let everybody wonder.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I guess. Right. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time. Thank you, bye. So there you go. What do you think to that? One host down, but nonetheless jam-packed, full of goodness. YouTube watchers, do subscribe. It's a big help to us. Ultimately, further down the line, it's a big help to you, because we bring you the best content we can. Everybody jump over to cookiecast.com, drop us a line, let us know how you're getting on, let us know what you think, any of that sort of stuff. So that's it for this one. Might be the end of an era, who knows, but it's certainly the end of a year. So from everyone here at the Football Podcast and at CookieCast, we'd like to wish you a Happy New Year. So until next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then. Bye.